Anna stood near the gate of her childhood home, holding a small bag in her hand. The village looked smaller than she remembered, but it felt heavier. The air was quiet, and the wind moved slowly through the trees. Her father was gone, and the house no longer belonged to her. She had returned after many years, not because she wanted to, but because she had to. A letter from a lawyer had brought her back, carrying news that changed everything. Her father had lived a simple life. He was not rich, but he worked hard every day. He fixed things for people, grew food behind the house, and never asked for much. Anna remembered him as a calm man who spoke less but watched more. When she left the village years ago to find work in the city, he never stopped her. He only said that she should be strong and honest. That was the last advice he gave her in person. The reading of the will took place in a small office near the main road. Anna sat alone on one side of the table. On the other side sat the lawyer, a serious man with tired eyes. He spoke clearly and slowly, reading each line with care. The house was sold. The land was divided. The savings were used to clear debts. When the lawyer finished, Anna felt empty. She waited for more, hoping there was something else. Then the lawyer looked at her and said one final line. Her father had left her an old shed. Anna blinked, thinking she heard wrong. The lawyer repeated it and slid a paper toward her. The shed stood on a small piece of land at the far end of the field. It was old, weak, and forgotten. Anna remembered it well. As a child, she played near it but was never allowed to go inside. Her father always told her it was not safe. Now it was all she owned. People in the village noticed her return quickly. Some looked at her with pity. Others whispered when she passed by. They knew what she had received, and many thought it was nothing. Anna felt their eyes on her as she walked toward the field. She kept her head down and focused on the path. Her father would not have done something meaningless. She believed that deeply. The shed stood alone, surrounded by dry grass and old fence posts. The wood was dark from age, and the roof sagged slightly in the middle. One corner leaned toward the ground, as if tired of standing. Anna stopped a few steps away and took a deep breath. This was her inheritance. This was her father's last message to her. She walked around the shed slowly. The door was locked, but the lock was old. The walls were covered in scratches and marks made by tools or weather. A small window on one side was cloudy with dust. It was clear no one had been there in a long time. Still, something about the place felt watched. Not in a frightening way, but in a careful way. Anna remembered moments from her childhood. Her father spending late nights working quietly. Him cleaning his hands before dinner, even when they were already clean. Him looking toward the field often, as if checking on something important. She had never asked questions back then. Now those memories felt heavier. She went back to the village that evening and stayed in a small room above the local shop. Sleep did not come easily. Her mind was full of questions. Why the shed? Why only that? Why leave her with something everyone else saw as useless? She turned on the bed, listening to the sounds of the village settling into the night. The next morning, Anna returned to the lawyer's office. She asked if there was anything else she should know. The lawyer shook his head and said her father had been very clear. The shed was hers, and nothing more. Before she left, he handed her a small envelope. Inside was a single key, old and rusted. Anna felt her heart beat faster. This key belonged to the shed. She walked back to the field with the key held tightly in her hand. The sun was higher now, and the light made the shed look less sad, though still worn. She reached the door and placed the key into the lock. It turned with effort, making a sharp sound that broke the silence. The door opened slowly. Inside, the shed smelled of wood and dust. The air was cool. Old chairs were stacked in one corner. Empty boxes lined the wall. A workbench stood near the back, covered with marks from years of use. Tools hung from nails, some missing, some broken. It looked like a place that once mattered deeply to someone. Anna stepped inside and closed the door behind her. For the first time since her father's passing, she felt close to him. This was where he spent his quiet hours. This was where he thought and planned. She walked carefully, touching the workbench, the walls, the tools. Everything told a story, even if she did not yet understand it. As she reached the back of the shed, something caught her eye. The floorboards there looked different. They were cleaner, stronger, and newer than the rest. Anna stopped and stared. Her father had fixed these boards recently. That meant one thing. The shed still held a secret, and it was waiting for her. She knelt down and pressed her hand against the floor. A strange feeling filled her chest, part fear, part hope. Whatever her father wanted her to find, this was only the beginning. Anna stayed still for a long moment, her hand resting on the newer floorboards. The shed was quiet, broken only by the sound of her breathing. She did not rush. Her father had taught her to be patient, to observe before acting. She stood up slowly and looked around again, as if the shed itself might speak if she listened closely. She checked the door and made sure it was locked from the inside. The place felt private now, like a small world meant only for her. Sunlight came in through the dusty window, falling across the floor and stopping near the boards that looked out of place. The rest of the floor was rough and dark, worn down by time. These boards were smoother and lighter. They did not belong to the past. They belonged to something recent. Anna did not have tools with her, so she decided to return later. She left the shed and locked the door carefully. As she walked back to the village, her mind was busy. Every step felt different now. She was no longer just a daughter who had lost her father. She was someone standing at the edge of a mystery. At the village shop, people greeted her politely, but their eyes followed her. She bought a small hammer, a flat metal bar, and a flashlight. The shop owner asked what she planned to fix. Anna smiled softly and said she had old wood to repair. The man nodded, not asking more. That night, Anna sat alone in her room, holding the notebook she used for work notes. She wrote down her thoughts, trying to understand her father's actions. He was careful with money. He never repaired anything unless it mattered. Fixing part of the shed floor meant it was important. It meant he wanted something protected. The thought made her feel both nervous and excited. The next morning, she returned to the shed early. The field was quiet, and the grass moved gently in the wind. Birds rested on the fence posts. Anna unlocked the door and stepped inside, carrying her tools. She placed them near the workbench and took a moment to breathe. This was not just a search. It felt like a conversation with her father, one that crossed time. She knelt near the back of the shed and examined the boards closely. One edge showed a small gap. Another board had tiny marks along the side, as if it had been lifted before. Anna slid the metal bar under the edge and pressed down carefully. The wood resisted at first, then lifted with a soft sound. Dust rose into the air, making her cough lightly. She lifted the board fully and leaned it against the wall. Beneath it was a shallow space, dark and cool. Anna pointed the flashlight inside. At first, she saw only dirt and stones. Then the light touched something solid and smooth. A metal box sat hidden beneath the floor, wrapped in thick cloth. Her hands shook as she reached for it. The box was heavier than she expected. She placed it on the floor and sat beside it, staring. Her father had hidden this carefully. Whatever was inside mattered enough for him to keep it secret from everyone else. Anna removed the cloth slowly. The metal box was scratched but strong. A small lock held it closed. She looked at it closely and smiled faintly. The key. The old key the lawyer had given her was not just for the shed door. She took the key from her pocket and placed it into the lock. It fit perfectly. The lock opened with a soft click that echoed in the quiet shed. Anna lifted the lid. Inside were neatly arranged items. Several old letters tied with string. A folded map, yellowed with age. A small notebook with her father's handwriting on the cover. Anna picked up the notebook first. Seeing his writing made her throat tight. She ran her fingers over the letters, feeling closer to him than she had since his passing. She opened the notebook carefully. The pages were filled with notes, drawings, and dates. Her father had written about the land, the weather, and changes he noticed over the years. He wrote about water levels in the soil, about certain spots where plants grew better, about sounds he heard beneath the ground after heavy rain. Anna did not understand everything yet, but she knew this was not random. It was a record of careful observation. She set the notebook aside and opened the letters. Most were written to her, though they were never sent. In them, her father spoke honestly. He wrote about his worries, his hopes, and his trust in her. He said he left her the shed because it was the only place untouched by others. He said that some things were best learned through effort, not given freely. Tears filled Anna's eyes, but she did not cry loudly. She felt calm. Her father's voice felt present, guiding her gently. She folded the letters and placed them back in the box. Finally, she opened the map. It showed the land around the village, marked with symbols and notes. Lines crossed the fields, stopping near the shed. There were markings she did not recognize, but they were clear and purposeful. Her father had planned something for a long time. Anna sat back and looked around the shed again. It no longer looked weak or forgotten. It looked like the center of something important. The walls that once felt empty now felt full of meaning. The workbench was not just a table. It was a place where decisions were made. She carefully placed everything back into the metal box and covered it again. For now, she did not want to move it. She put the floorboard back into place, pressing it down firmly. From above, nothing looked different. As Anna stood up, she felt a new sense of strength. She did not yet know what her father had truly left her, but she knew this much. The shed was not the end of the story. It was only the beginning. Anna did not return to the shed for 2 days. She needed time to think. What she had found under the floor was not something small. Her father had spent years watching the land, writing notes, and drawing maps. He trusted her to understand it, but understanding did not come quickly. She walked through the village, watched people work, and listened to the sounds around her. Everything felt connected now. On the 3rd morning, Anna woke early. The sky was clear, and the air felt fresh. She packed some food, her notebook, and the flashlight. This time, she did not feel nervous. She felt ready. When she reached the field, the shed stood quietly, just as before. But to Anna, it no longer looked lonely. It looked patient. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. The smell of wood greeted her again. She walked straight to the back and lifted the floorboard. The metal box waited exactly where she had left it. She pulled it out and placed it on the floor. This time, she did not hesitate. She opened the box and took out her father's notebook. She sat on the floor with her back against the wall and began to read carefully. The notes spoke about changes over time. Her father wrote about how the ground stayed cool in summer near the shed. He wrote about grass staying green there even when the rest of the field dried. He wrote about a soft sound beneath the earth after long rain, like slow movement. Anna read each line slowly, trying to imagine what he noticed. She opened her own notebook and started copying key points. Writing helped her think. As she wrote, patterns began to form. The shed was always at the center of his notes. Everything pointed back to this place. Her father had not chosen it by chance. Anna took out the map again. She spread it on the floor and held it down with small tools so it would not curl. The markings showed lines leading inward, all meeting near the shed. There were notes near those lines, written smaller and more carefully. She leaned closer and read them. Clean water below. Strong ground. Do not tell anyone. Her heart beat faster. Water. That explained the notes about sound and cool ground. Her father may have found something under the land, something valuable but natural. He was not a man who chased money, but he cared deeply about stability and safety. Water meant life. It meant growth. Anna stood and walked around the shed slowly, holding the map in her hands. She tapped the floor gently with her foot, listening. Some spots sounded solid. Others sounded hollow. Near the back, close to where the box was hidden, the sound was softer. Different. She decided to test her idea carefully. She took a long metal rod from the workbench and pressed it into the ground through a small crack near the wall where earth met wood. It went in easier than expected. She pulled it back out. The tip was damp. Anna closed her eyes for a moment. Her father had protected this secret for years. He had not sold the land. He had not spoken about it. He waited until the right time, until the right person was ready. That person was her. The rest of the day, Anna worked slowly. She marked spots on the floor using chalk from the workbench. She compared them with the map. Each mark matched. Her father's work was careful and exact. By evening, she had a clear picture. There was a water source beneath the shed, steady and clean. Anna sat on the steps outside as the sun lowered. She ate quietly and watched the light change the field's color. For the first time since her return, she smiled without sadness. This was not just about land or water. It was about trust. Her father believed she would choose the right path. That night, she dreamed of him standing in the field, pointing toward the shed without speaking. She woke with calm in her chest. Over the next week, Anna began learning more. She visited the small library in the nearby town. She read books about land and water. She spoke carefully with an older farmer, asking general questions without sharing her secret. She learned how underground water could change a place slowly, how it could support gardens and crops if treated with respect. She returned to the shed each evening to read her father's notes again. She noticed things she missed before. Small reminders written in the margins. Be patient. Do not rush. Think long-term. These words felt like advice meant for this moment. One afternoon, as she worked inside the shed, someone approached. It was Tom, a man from the village who often repaired fences. He stood outside the open door and greeted her. Anna felt a brief moment of worry but stayed calm. Tom asked what she planned to do with the shed. She answered honestly but carefully. She said she wanted to fix it and maybe grow something nearby. Tom nodded and said the land had always been strange there. He said plants grew well even without much care. He laughed lightly and walked away. Anna watched him go, realizing how close her father's secret always was. Hidden in plain sight. That evening, Anna made a decision. She would not sell the shed. She would not rush to build anything large. She would start small. She would repair the shed properly, clean the land around it, and test the water slowly. She would honor her father's work by continuing it with care. She placed the metal box back under the floor and closed it again. This time, she felt no fear. The shed was no longer just an inheritance. It was a responsibility. As she locked the door and walked back toward the village, Anna felt stronger than before. The path ahead was not easy, but it was clear. Her father had not left her nothing. He had left her knowledge, patience, and a future waiting to be built. The fourth day arrived quietly. The storm was still there, but its anger had softened. Snow no longer struck the walls with force. The wind moved slower, like it was tired. Inside Tom's double cabin, people noticed the change right away. Morning light slipped through the small windows. Children woke first and whispered instead of crying. Adults stretched stiff arms and legs. The warmth inside the cabin felt even more valuable after 3 long days of fear. Tom stood near the door, watching the sky through a narrow opening. He did not smile yet. Experience told him storms liked to pretend they were finished. People gathered close as he spoke. The storm is weaker, Tom said. But we stay careful. We stay together. Everyone agreed. Food was shared slowly. Tom showed how to eat just enough to keep strength. Warm water was passed from hand to hand. No one complained. They had learned patience. Ben helped Tom check the stove. Another man helped stack wood closer. A woman cleaned cups and bowls using snow melted carefully. The shelter was no longer just Tom's space. It belonged to everyone now. Outside, Pine Hollow looked frozen and silent. Houses were buried halfway. Smoke no longer rose from most chimneys. The town that once felt alive now looked like a picture locked in ice. By midday, Tom decided to test the path again. He asked for 2 volunteers. Ben and a younger man named Leo stepped forward. They tied ropes around their waists, holding the other end inside the cabin. The door opened, and cold rushed in. Snow reached above their knees. They moved slowly, marking spots where the snow was thinner or deeper. They returned after a short time, breath heavy but faces hopeful. "The wind is weaker," Leo said. "And the snow feels lighter." Tom nodded. "Good," he said. "But we wait." Inside, people began to talk about the future. What they would fix first. Who needed help the most. How they would clear roads and check homes. The fear that once ruled the room had changed into planning. Children played quiet games near the wall. Laughter returned in soft pieces. It warmed the room in a way fire never could. That afternoon, the generator was turned on again. The radio crackled, then cleared for a moment. A voice broke through, faint but real. "This is a regional update," the voice said. "Storm systems are moving east. Assistance teams are preparing to respond. Please stay sheltered." Cheers filled the cabin. Some people cried. Others held hands tightly. Hope was no longer a guess. It had a voice. Tom raised his hand gently. "We stay calm," he said. "Help will come when it can." As evening came, the sky outside grew lighter for the first time in days. The clouds lifted slightly, revealing pale shapes of mountains far away. People gathered near the windows, silent and amazed. Ben stood beside Tom. "I never thanked you properly," Ben said. "Not just for the shelter. For teaching us something." Tom looked at the room filled with people. "We taught each other," he replied. That night, the temperature dropped sharply. The storm made one final effort. Snow fell again, but without strength. The cabin held firm. People slept better than before. Trust had replaced fear. On the 5th morning, the storm finally broke. The sky turned clear blue. Sunlight touched the snow, making it shine. The wind stopped completely. A deep silence covered Pine Hollow. Tom opened the door wide. Cold air entered, but it was clean and calm. People stepped outside carefully, blinking in the bright light. The town looked damaged, but alive. Neighbors helped neighbors without being asked. Paths were cleared. Doors were dug free. Smoke began rising again as fires were rebuilt. When help finally arrived later that day, they found a town already working together. They asked who had led the shelter. People pointed to Tom. Tom did not step forward. He picked up a shovel and continued clearing snow. The double cabin stood behind him, quiet and strong. No one laughed at it now. It had saved a town. The sun stayed bright on the morning after the storm. Pine Hollow looked different under the clear sky. Snow still covered the ground, but the heavy fear was gone. The air felt quiet and clean, like the town was taking a deep breath after a long struggle. People stepped out of their homes slowly. Some doors were damaged. Some roofs were heavy with snow. But voices returned. Movement returned. Life returned. Tom stood outside his double cabin, holding a shovel. He worked without stopping, clearing snow from the path. His hands were tired, but his face stayed calm. One by one, neighbors came to help him. No one needed to be asked. Ben worked beside Tom, pushing snow away from the walls. "I used to think you were strange," Ben said with a small smile. Tom nodded. "I know," he replied. They worked in silence for a while. The sound of shovels cutting snow filled the air. Across town, people helped each other dig out cars and doors. Children laughed again, throwing small pieces of snow. Older people sat in the sunlight, wrapped in blankets, watching with relief. Later that day, help finally reached Pine Hollow. Trucks arrived slowly, pushing through the snow. Workers stepped out, surprised to see the town already moving, already organized. They asked questions. How did people survive 5 days without power? Where did everyone stay warm? Again, fingers pointed toward Tom's cabin. A worker walked over to Tom and asked him how he planned for this. Tom wiped his hands on his coat and answered simply, "I watched. I listened. I remembered stories." The worker nodded with respect. As supplies were shared and systems were repaired, the town gathered near the center. People stood together, tired but proud. Someone suggested a meeting later to talk about the future. That evening, as the sun lowered, Pine Hollow held its first gathering after the storm. It was small and simple. No speeches, just people talking honestly. Ben spoke first. "We trusted comfort," he said. "We trusted that someone else would save us." Tom trusted preparation. Others nodded. A woman stood next. "We should learn from this," she said. "We should help each other prepare." The town agreed. No one asked Tom to speak. He stayed near the back, listening. But everyone watched him. In the days that followed, Pine Hollow changed its habits. People shared supplies. They checked on older neighbors. They learned how to store food and water. They repaired homes with stronger materials. The double cabin became a symbol, not of fear but of care. Children asked Tom why he built it that way. "So warmth can stay," he told them. "And people can stay together." Spring came slowly. Snow melted. The town healed. Laughter returned fully. One afternoon, Ben walked with Tom near the edge of town. "Will you ever build more cabins like that?" Ben asked. Tom looked at the land and thought. "Only if it is needed," he said. Pine Hollow never mocked preparation again. They remembered the blizzard. They remembered the light in the storm. And they remembered the man who built something different, not to stand apart, but to bring everyone together when it mattered most.